The radio crackled once, thin and distorted by altitude and panic. And the words that came through were final, almost calm in the way people sound when they believe there is nothing left to do. It's over. The transmission cut out, swallowed by the mountains and the gunfire. And for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Below, a small team of Navy SEALs was pinned down on a steep, rocky slope where the air burned the lungs and every sound echoed to far. Above them, unseen and unremarked, a woman lay pressed against cold stone, her rifle anchored into the mountain as if it had grown there, her eyes steady behind glass that showed her a battlefield most people could not even imagine. The mission had not begun as a story meant to be remembered. It was supposed to be quick, precise, forgettable. Intelligence suggested a high-value target was moving through a remote mountain corridor, used for decades by fighters who knew every path, every shadow, every wind shift. The SEALs were inserted before dawn, rotors fading into the dark, boots touching ground where maps ended and instinct took over. They had trained for terrain like this, trained to move fast and vanish faster. But mountains have a way of stripping confidence down to its bones. Rocks shift, sound carries, distance lies. What no one could fully plan for was how quickly things would unravel. The team was compromised almost immediately. Silhouettes betrayed by a sliver of moon and a single loose stone that clattered down a slope. Like a starting gun, fire erupted from positions higher than expected, disciplined and overlapping. The SEALs moved, returned fire, tried to break contact, but the terrain worked against them. Every step uphill cost breath and time. Every step downhill risked exposure. Within minutes, the reality was clear. They were outnumbered, outpositioned, and running out of options. The call for support went out, bouncing through relays and command posts miles away. But help in the mountains never comes quickly. Aircraft were too far. Weather was turning. Artillery risked friendly fire. The team leader's voice stayed controlled as he updated their situation. But those listening could hear what he did not say. This was becoming a fight for survival, not success. Somewhere in the chaos, the order was given to prepare for worst-case scenarios. That was when the words were spoken. It's over. Far above them, nearly 2 miles away in straight-line distance and more in the reality of thin air and jagged stone, a sniper team had already been watching. They were not part of the original plan, not in the way people imagine neat lines and clear roles. They were contingency, insurance. A quiet presence on a ridgeline so high it made helicopters nervous. The woman behind the rifle had been there for hours, motionless except for slow adjustments that looked like breathing with the mountain itself. She had learned long ago that stillness was not the absence of movement, but the control of it. Her path to that ridge had not been simple. She had entered the military when the idea of a female sniper still carried more skepticism than support, when she had to be twice as precise to be considered half as credible. Training had been brutal and unromantic. Long days on the range, longer nights with wind charts and ballistic tables. Learning how temperature bends metal and how gravity never stops working, no matter how much you wish it would. She learned to read mirage like language, to feel elevation in her bones, to make decisions alone and live with them forever. Now, through her scope, the chaos below resolved into patterns. Muzzle flashes marked enemy positions like brief stars. She could see the SEALs pinned in a narrow defile, their movements sharp and practiced even under pressure. She could also see how little room they had left. The distance was extreme, far beyond what most people imagine when they think of a sniper shot. At that range, bullets do not fly so much as arc, taking seconds to arrive, drifting with winds that change between shooter and target. A miss was not just a miss. It was wasted time the team below did not have. The radio message reached her through a secondary channel, stripped of drama, but heavy with meaning. It's over. For a fraction of a second, she allowed herself to understand what that meant. Then she pushed it aside. There was still work to do. She began building a solution in her head, piece by piece. Distance first, angle second, elevation difference. Wind at her position, wind halfway down the slope, wind in the valley where heat shimmered like water. She adjusted her scope, dialed in numbers that would sound absurd to anyone unfamiliar with long-range shooting. Spotter data came in quietly beside her, confirmations and corrections spoken in a tone that suggested they were discussing weather, not lives. The first shot was not dramatic. There was no explosion, no visible impact from her vantage point, just the controlled recoil of the rifle and the long wait that followed. Seconds stretching until the bullet arrived where she had sent it. Through the scope, she saw a figure drop, the sudden absence of movement more telling than any reaction. She did not celebrate. She recalculated. Enemy fighters began to shift, confused by a threat they could not locate. Shots started coming from different angles, less coordinated now, more frantic. She used that. One shot became two became five. Each trigger pull was deliberate, followed by a pause that allowed the mountain to settle and the data to update. The SEALs below felt the change before they fully understood it. Fire slackened. Pressure eased in small but crucial ways. A path that had been sealed began to open, inch by inch. As minutes passed, the number of shots grew. 10, 15, 20. The physical toll began to set in. At that altitude, even lying still taxes the body. Fingers numb, muscles cramp. Hydration becomes a calculation as important as ballistics. Still, she stayed locked in, her world reduced to glass, crosshairs, and the quiet voice of her spotter. The idea of impossibility did not enter her mind, only variables. Below, the team leader realized something extraordinary was happening. Enemy fire was being neutralized from somewhere impossibly far away. He heard the distinctive cracks, delayed and distant, and understood that someone had them covered in a way that defied reason. He keyed his radio again, this time with something like disbelief edging into his voice, and called for confirmation. The response was calm. "You're covered. Keep moving." The count reached 30. By then, the engagement had shifted entirely. What had been an ambush became a retreat, enemy fighters pulling back from a threat they could neither see nor escape. The SEALs moved with renewed urgency, exploiting gaps that had not existed minutes before. They dragged wounded teammates, redistributed ammo, and pushed toward terrain that offered cover and extraction options. Every few moments, another shot cracked from the heights, another obstacle removed. Shot 39 came later than the others. After a pause long enough that it almost did not come at all, the final target had taken cover behind rock, barely visible, a sliver of movement that most eyes would miss. She waited for the wind to settle, for the mountain to give her permission. When she fired, it felt less like pulling a trigger and more like completing a sentence. After that, there was nothing left to shoot. The radio traffic changed tone completely. Voices steadied. Commands replaced emergency calls. The words "is over" took on a different meaning now. Not surrender, but conclusion. Hours later, when helicopters finally clawed their way through thinning clouds to extract the team, the ridge above remained empty and silent. By the time anyone reached it, she was gone, leaving behind only flattened stone and brass that would be scattered by wind. Long before anyone could find it, in the days that followed, reports were written carefully. Distances were estimated, numbers debated. Some accounts said 30 shots, others said more. The figure 39 appeared in after-action summaries, then in retellings, then in the quiet conversations that happened between people who were there and know how close it came. Official records avoided superlatives. They always do. But among the SEALs who survived its slope, the story settled into something simple and unshakable. When it was over, it wasn't. She returned to anonymity as she always had. No interviews, no photographs, just another deployment, another range. Another lesson passed quietly to someone younger who reminded her of herself years ago. She knew how stories grow in the telling, how distances stretch and numbers harden into legend. She did not correct them. What mattered was not the record, but the result. People went home. Long after the mountains forgot the sound of gunfire, the moment remained frozen in the memories of those who heard that radio call and then felt the impossible hand of precision reach down from the sky. It is tempting to frame such moments as miracles, but miracles imply chance, and this was not chance. It was training, patience, and a refusal to accept the word over as final. Because sometimes the difference between an ending and survival is one steady breath, one impossible angle, and a single decision made far above the noise.